Hi, Julie Jones from SSB Performance, Smarter, Stronger, Better Mindset Training, here with this week's Mindset Made Simple Tip of the Week, brought to you by Game Day Sportswear. This week we're talking about what I learned on vacation, and you'll understand why here in a few minutes. But here's question number one and lesson number one. Did you know that Boston cream pie is actually cake? I did not know this, but I learned it the hard way. We were having a conversation about favorite cakes, and someone said they loved the Boston cream pie, and I said, oh, okay, what's in that? So they were telling me all the ingredients, and then I said, thinking through the whole thing, then you put that in a pie crust, all the stuff, you put it in a pie crust, and then you bake it? Laughter, complete laughter. And my sister ends the conversation basically by saying this, Julie, you're good at a lot of things, but this is not one of them. So, who calls a pie or a cake a pie? That's just dumb, right? Don't you agree? Do you agree with me on that? That's lesson number one. Lesson number two came in the pool. I challenged my 10-year-old son and my younger sister, 6 years younger, to a race, thinking that I am the superior athlete in the group. And we had to run it again because I lost the first one. So we ran it again. And guess what happened? I lost the second one. Then I thought, this pool is just not long enough. I certainly would have beat them if we had to go further because I'm in better shape. But the bottom line is I lost to a 10-year-old and I lost to my little sister. Gracefully, she did not gloat. However, my dad did. My family loves to poke at the things that they can make fun of me at. And it's all in good fun. But what this made me think of was, how do we handle the things we do well and the things we don't do well? And as we go into August here, August has already started, which is just crazy, and we start a new school year, we have a lot of college freshmen that are heading to campus for the first time, thinking about all the great things that they've been dreaming of since they were 8 years old and getting their scholarship, and they are going to find that their best day of practice is their first day, as Hall of Fame softball coach Mike Andrea once said, because after that, it's hard. They're going to be frustrated. They're going to doubt themselves. They are going to think that they made the wrong choice. They are going to question whether they want to play or not. Everyone goes through that at some point or another in the first few weeks of practice, or the first few months of college, or as soon as they sit on the bench for the first time. Whenever it comes, it comes. So how do we deal with that? We all deal with it. College practices are meant for us to grow. They are meant for us to get better. But we don't like to grow. We like to be comfortable. We like to think that we have reached the summit and we know everything we need to know and we've done everything we need to do and we're good. Why do I need to be pushed at this point? We don't like that push. But as Dr. Rob Bell said, he's a sports psychologist, he said, I heard this on a podcast, we are not meant to live at the top of the mountain. The ecosystem at the top of a mountain does not sustain life. Life is sustained below the tree lines or in the valleys. So what does that say about us as we're trying to get to our peak? We can't stay at our peak. It's not possible. We are going to fall down the mountain. We are going to get tripped up. We are going to need to be in the valley where we can get all the nourishment and all that beautiful, luscious stuff that we need in order to climb back up to our peak. And then hopefully that climb prepares us to be there when we need to be there. But we can't stay there. So how do we manage that? Here's something you can do. At the beginning of practice or at the beginning of your year, take your team and put them in groups of 2 and have them sit there for a few minutes and ask them to tell their partner 2 things they do really, really well. The first 40 seconds or so will be, uncomfortableness and lots of smiles and laughter. Oh, I don't know. Especially if they're female athletes, we know, and this is generalization, but you know as well as I do that women are not as good at telling what they do well. They're not as comfortable with it, so let's try to get past that and practice even with this little exercise. But eventually, everyone can come up with 2 things that they do really well. Once they have those things in their head, and we'll start to think of them, we know that words turn into pictures. Once they start to think of those, it's your time then to ask them, were you always good at those things? The answer is no. We did not come out of the womb able to do this skill. We had to learn everything. We had to learn how to walk, talk, everything, eat. So, if that's the case, if we have reached the summit in these two things that we think we do well, at some point we were in the valley, at some point we were climbing up the mountain, at some point the wind was blowing and beating us until we got to the top. And now we can do this at a respectable level. But we have a tendency to forget those things. And the first thing that happens when we get into practice and something goes wrong and we hit that wall, we start to think about everything else that's ever gone wrong in our life, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we can't do this. We forget that we withstood all those things. So reminding our athletes of the things that they do well, and the fact of the matter is that they didn't always do those things well. It's time to grow and climb and reach a new peak. Because the bottom of a mountain is just the top of another. Once we think we're at the summit, that just leads us to another mountain. We have to remember that everything worth it is hard. If we think we're going to walk into college or we're going to walk into high school or we're going to walk into a new job and everything is just going to go our way, we are fooling ourselves, and we know that. However, when we run into those obstacles, we still think, what? What do you mean I can't do this? And it's like, oh, maybe I can't do this. Oh, I can't do this. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. But reminding our athletes of what they do well and reminding them that in order to do those things well, they had to struggle at some point, and by golly, they made it. We can do it again. So as you get your groups together, as we start back into school, maybe start out by that, reminding them to look for what went well and what's going well now. We have to force ourselves to do that. It doesn't come naturally. But those victories are always there. Something always is going well. We just have a tendency to push that to the side and focus on the problem. So for this next week, what do you do well? How hard was it for you to get there? Do you forget how hard it was? Because when we get to the top, man, it's beautiful up there. We have a tendency to forget how hard it was, just like having a baby. It was miserable for some of us. And then you forget, and a lot of you go out and you do it again because it's worth it. Think about that. I'd love to work with your team. Now's the time to start thinking about how you can get your team more consistent, more confident, more resilient, more responsible. If I can help you with that, please give me a call, 234-206-0964 or juliej@ssbperformance.com. Let's figure out how we can work together. Until next week, have a great week. Manage the moments, climb the mountains. Be well.